Venezuela explodes, a president captured and a region on the brink. In the early hours of January 3rd, the silence over Caracas was shattered. Explosions echoed through the Venezuelan capital. Low-flying aircraft cut through the night sky. Power went out in parts of the city. Smoke rose near military installations. People woke up in panic, unsure whether they were witnessing a coup, a foreign invasion, or the beginning of a war. And then came the announcement that stunned the world. The President of the United States declared that Nicolas Maduro, the longtime leader of Venezuela, had been captured and removed from power during a U.S.-led military operation. If true, this would mark one of the most dramatic political interventions in modern history. A sitting president allegedly detained, a sovereign nation struck militarily, and a global shockwave rippling across governments, markets, and millions of lives. This is not just another breaking news story. This is a moment that could redefine Venezuela's future and reshape international power dynamics across the Western Hemisphere. To understand why Venezuela has reached this point, you need to understand Nicolas Maduro. Maduro came to power in 2013, following the death of Hugo Chavez. He inherited a country rich in oil but deeply dependent on state control. Over the next decade, Venezuela experienced economic collapse, hyperinflation, mass emigration, shortages of food and medicine, and widespread poverty. Elections under Maduro were repeatedly challenged by international observers. Political opponents were arrested or forced into exile. Media outlets were shut down. Protests were met with force. Meanwhile, relations with the United States deteriorated year by year. Washington accused Maduro and senior officials of corruption, human rights abuses, and involvement in international drug trafficking. Sanctions were imposed. Assets were frozen. Diplomatic recognition was withdrawn. For years, this conflict remained political and economic. But behind the scenes, tensions were rising. Military movements increased. Naval forces entered the Caribbean. Rhetoric hardened on both sides. Venezuela prepared for confrontation, while the United States framed its actions as enforcement of justice and regional security. By late 2025, the situation was no longer stable. It was combustible. Just after 2 a.m. local time, multiple explosions were reported across Caracas and surrounding regions. Residents described loud blasts, shaking buildings, and sudden power failures. Military facilities appeared to be targeted. Airspace was active. Emergency sirens echoed through neighborhoods. Hours later, the announcement came. According to U.S. leadership, the operation was successful. Nicolas Maduro and his wife were reportedly detained and removed from the country. The mission was described as precise, decisive, and necessary. Venezuela's government responded with fury. Officials called it an act of aggression, a violation of sovereignty, a declaration of war. A national state of emergency was announced, and military forces were placed on high alert. Inside Venezuela, confusion spread. Was Maduro really gone? Who was in control? What would happen next? And outside the country, the world held its breath. The international response was immediate and deeply divided. Some governments expressed alarm, warning that military intervention without international approval could destabilize the entire region. Others emphasized the need for calm, diplomacy, and protection of civilians. Major world powers condemned the operation, calling it dangerous and illegal. Allies of Venezuela framed it as imperial aggression. Calls for emergency meetings and urgent diplomatic talks followed. Public opinion, however, was split. Some celebrated the possible end of a regime blamed for years of suffering. Others questioned the legality, morality, and long-term consequences of removing a leader by force. On social media, debates exploded. Is this liberation or occupation, justice or chaos? The answers were not clear, and still aren't. For Venezuela, the stakes could not be higher. If Maduro is truly removed from power, the country faces a dangerous transition period. Power vacuums are rarely peaceful. Competing factions may emerge. Institutions weakened by years of crisis may struggle to function. There is also hope. Opposition leaders see this moment as a chance for democratic reform, international reintegration, and economic recovery. Millions of Venezuelans who fled the country are watching closely, wondering if this could finally be a turning point. But hope comes with risk. Military intervention can trigger resistance. Civil unrest can escalate. Humanitarian crises can worsen before they improve. Venezuela stands at a crossroads, and the direction it takes will shape the lives of generations. This crisis is not limited to Venezuela. It challenges long-standing principles of international law. It tests the limits of military power. And it sends a message, intentional or not, to governments around the world. If a sitting president can be removed this way, what precedent does that set? Markets reacted cautiously. Oil prices fluctuated. Regional stability was questioned. Neighboring countries prepared for potential refugee flows. Diplomacy now faces its hardest test. Can escalation be avoided? Can legitimacy be restored? Can peace follow force? These are the questions dominating global discussions. What happened in Venezuela is not just news. It is history unfolding in real time. A nation shaken by explosions. A leader allegedly removed. A world divided over justice and power. Whether this moment becomes the beginning of renewal or the start of deeper instability will depend on what happens next. Not just by governments, but by institutions, communities, and the Venezuelan people themselves. One thing is certain: Venezuela will never be the same again, and the world will be watching every step.